Tutorial is going to explain how to work with brushes in Illustrator. Pretty straightforward, but you might need to do a little digging to find interesting brushes. So if you're doing hand drawing in Illustrator, which at least one of your projects is going to require some amount of hand drawing, you're probably going to use the brush tool, or the paintbrush tool. So the paintbrush tool, by default, if you just click on it and start to draw, it is just a round brush. It's just a plain old brush. It's probably going to be black because that's going to be kind of your default stroke color. So down here, again, here's my stroke color, which is black. It doesn't have a fill color. We don't really want that, and I'll show you why here. We may want it, but it gets kind of awkward. Pretty much when we're trying to draw, we want to just have a stroke color. We can also change how thick it is right here. So this is a 1-point brush right now, and here's a 5-point brush. Again, because we're creating this in Illustrator from scratch, these are vectors. This is a perfectly crisp and clear brush stroke. It is not pixelated. It is just, it's a vector. We can manipulate these just like we can anything else. If I were to click on this, there's paths and anchors. With my direct selection tool, I could click on this anchor and drag it longer. I could click on the handle to change the shape of the curve. Every single thing that you create in Illustrator from scratch, or if you have image traced and expanded it because it was a photograph, you can manipulate everything. If I want a different color, I could just come over here to my colors palette, and because this is selected, I could make it whichever color I want. I could come over here and click on this one and make that whatever color I want as well. We could also change the opacity of the brush stroke. This is changing the opacity of this one because I've already selected it. If I leave it like that, any subsequent paintbrush that I use is going to be lowered in opacity. So you'll be able to see through to the brush strokes or anything else that's underneath. And the great thing about this is that this opacity is not a destructive quality, meaning I could always change it. If I were to go back and click on this pink stroke that I made, that was really red, but it looks pink because the opacity was lowered, all I have to do is click on the opacity at the top and drag it back, and I'm right back to the way it was. And I could do this at any point. The thing is, where are our brushes? Well, here are some really basic things here. There's like a little calligraphy kind of brush. There's like a charcoal sort of brush here that I could click on and get kind of this. This looks kind of scratchy, right? Like it looks a little bit like, I don't know, sort of like a charcoal-y type of thing. Once again, though, it's created in Illustrator. If I zoom in, this is what it looks like up close. Kind of cool. But it is still very sharp edges. There are no gradients or anything like that. It is what it is. Just like the color groups that I covered in the other tutorial, there are more brushes. You just have to find them. So if you open up your brushes panel here, which is along the right, you still see all the same ones that you had before. However, just like we could load our color menu, our color library, you can click here and you could go into, let's say, artistic, and here's calligraphy styles, charcoal pencil, all these things. Ink. So what if I click on there? Well, it brings up lots of different brush strokes. The cool thing is now any of these that I want to use, I could just click on them and they're going to end up in my brushes box here. So I could click on that one, this one, whichever ones I want. I could get rid of this if I wanted to. And now I could say I want to use this stroke for this one. And then maybe I want to use this type of stroke for this line. And up here I could switch to this and so on. And basically you can mix and match between the different brush strokes that you've added to this brushes menu here, brushes box. Once again, all of these have their own parameters. I can make them thicker or thinner based on the stroke. I could even change that after the fact. I could select that one I just made, and I can make that thinner or thicker or lowered in opacity. Again, doing these kind of things in Illustrator is like a huge step above doing this in Photoshop, because you would never be able to do any of these things, really. Again, you kind of do lose the ability to paint a way more realistically. If you notice, unlike your paintbrush or your brush tool in Photoshop, which actually has it had a softness, if you remember. You could have a soft edge to your brush, or you could have a hard edge and have it super crisp. That is not an option. Like, your brush is what it is. There's no such thing as like a soft kind of airbrush look to it. If there is, it might be something you'd have to download, and I'm not even sure that's even an option. I guess what goes hand in hand with brushes is erasing. The eraser is right here, and that'll allow you to erase through brush strokes or anything else that you've created in Illustrator. If you need to erase an image, you'll have to image trace it and expand it first. Then it'll allow you to erase it. But if I have like, let's say I want to erase this brush stroke, I have it selected. I clicked on it. The eraser is only going to erase that brush stroke. And look what it's doing, because it's so thick. It separated these. You can see there's a gap now in the path. And now it looks kind of like a string of hot dogs or something because of my thick brush stroke. But if I were to lower that, you can see that they are, in fact, 3 different strokes now. So if you have a brush stroke or an object, anything selected, and you erase it, it's going to only erase through that selected thing. If you have nothing selected, it will erase everything that's there. So all of those brush strokes now have been erased through because I didn't select one to begin with. I didn't isolate one to start. So again, that's how you can load. That's how you can create brush strokes. How you can change the color. How you can change the size, the stroke, weight, basically, and how you can change the different brushes. Here's what happens if we have a solid color and we try to draw something. Okay, that did not work. Let me switch to a different brush that's going to be far easier to see. So I'm just going to draw this. Okay, that just has a stroke. Does not have a fill color. I'm going to make it 100% opacity. But what if I do add a fill color, like blue? That's what happens. It's a brush stroke. What the heck does it fill? Well, it basically draws a straight line from where you started the brush stroke to where it ended, and it fills in the negative space like that. Usually not something that we want to do, which is why you kind of have to like jump through some hoops to even make that happen. So most of the time, again, we do not want to have a fill color on our brush strokes. If you do, though, you can. It will work.